When you believe you're capable of doing whatever you want, you start searching for proof. When you believe you aren't, you do the same. Your self esteem determines everything you dare to do and fear even to attempt. So, why destroy it with your own hands? Your self esteem directly affects your readiness to achieve your dream life. It's the fundamental certainty that your mind is competent to deal with reality. When it's high and stable, it helps you achieve your goals, dreams, and happiness. When it's fleeting and fragile, it leaves you vulnerable to doubt, fear, and dependency on external validation. Each second of your life, your self esteem decides whether you'll step forward or back, try or avoid, speak up or stay silent, embody your dreams or let them fade. Numerous studies across education, work, sports, and health try to get an answer. Does success build self esteem or does self esteem build success? The data was unmistakable. Self esteem came first. For instance, in Spain, researchers examined what distinguishes productive professionals from average ones. Among university staff, those with higher self-esteem didn't just feel better about themselves, but did better. They published more, taught more effectively, and engaged more deeply in their field. Their belief in themselves translated into more visible output. The other two long-term career studies revealed that people who started out believing in their worth ended up with better jobs, healthier work environments, and fewer self-sabotaging habits. Confidence wasn't just the result of winning, but the reason they kept going. In the sports field, scientists also found a striking pattern. Athletes with higher self-esteem entered competition calmer, more focused, and performed better than peers who doubted themselves. Same talent but different inner dialogue. And the difference dictates who reaches their potential and who freezes. A team studying startup founders discovered that self-esteem fuels risk-taking and innovation. Entrepreneurs who scored higher in self-esteem were significantly more likely to launch new ventures, pivot after failure, and pursue bold ideas. Even in the field of health, the story repeats. A study on adolescents found that those with higher self-esteem were far more likely to adopt healthy habits, exercising, eating well, and taking care of their bodies. Again, it's not always that you exercise, eat well, and take care of yourself and gain self-esteem because of that, but you believe that you can maintain discipline and achieve the desired results. And that's why you step into a healthy lifestyle. Self-esteem decides whether you believe your well-being is worth fighting for. Self-image is a control mechanism. It either sets your limits or removes them. So how do we not destroy the very thing that drives our growth, our positive self-image and high self-esteem? The answer is in our inner dialogue. Because before anyone else's opinion, it's your own voice that defines how you feel about yourself. In my last video, I talked about how to be a friend to yourself versus how to have a loving relationship with yourself. Positive inner talk is the basis of both being your own friend and admiring yourself. For a long time, I was my own worst limiting critic. I didn't even notice how harsh my inner voice had become. Every small failure and each worry about the potential failure turned into proof that I wasn't enough. And because I kept repeating those same thoughts over and over, they started to feel like the truth, despite all the facts pointing to the opposite. When you tell yourself the same story long enough, your mind starts to believe it, even when all the evidence says otherwise. I had achievements, progress, people telling me I was brilliant, but deep down, I'd already convinced myself that I wasn't. And the surprising thing was, for years, I thought that voice was me, but it wasn't. It was just a habit. A tone I learned somewhere along the way and kept repeating until it became my truth. It even transformed into some kind of comfort zone for inaction and avoiding efforts. But the stress, sadness, and guilt before myself were accumulating, and eventually I was just done with it. Gradually, I started questioning why I ignore my strengths so blindly and fixate on weaknesses, or even invent new ones that don't exist. The moment I started talking to myself with the admiration I deserve, everything I was afraid to chase but wanted so badly stopped feeling like a lifelong burden. Instead, it started feeling like challenges I'm excited to take on, even if I fail on some of them. Scholars often describe positive thinking as opportunity thinking and negative one as obstacle thinking. Several studies found that people who used positive self-talk scored significantly higher in self-esteem and mood. The recent research found that when people practice intentional positive self-talk, even talking to themselves in the second person like "you've got this," their overall well-being improved, their stress went down, their confidence went up, and they just liked themselves more. However, the worst thing you can tell yourself is something you don't believe. Repeating rigid affirmations like "I'm flawless," "I never fail," "everyone loves me," can feel superficially uplifting, but if beneath the surface you know something's off, it can even worsen the situation. If you're saying things that you don't genuinely believe, you send your mind the message, "I'm not reliable. My words don't match the facts. That mismatch undermines trust in yourself, so your inner voice grows skeptical instead of empowering. Stable self esteem arises when you speak to yourself honestly, identifying your strengths and weaknesses, what you've already achieved, and what you can still improve. That's the trust that becomes the foundation of stepping forward rather than stepping back. That's how you build genuine self esteem, by making your mind a voice you can rely on. Here's how you can start making your inner voice your support rather than a demoralizing tool. Encourage yourself the same way you would comfort a friend who's trying their best. When you make a mistake, not only minor ones, but even major ones, instead of replaying, "I'm so stupid, how could I mess that up? I always do this," ask yourself, "What can I learn from this? What can I do differently next time?" This turns failure into the encouragement to do even better instead of the reason for punishment. Such shift from self-criticism to self-support gives you this: more rational decisions because you're not clouded by shame or fear of judgment. More risks taken because failure becomes tolerable, so you try things you want no matter the outcome. Faster learning, you extract lessons and continue your journey instead of drowning in self-sabotage. And just deeper satisfaction in simply being yourself, even if it's not the perfect version. When you treat your errors as lessons rather than proofs of inadequacy, and squash on those persuasions about your incompetency rather than blindly believing them, your mind stops being your enemy and becomes your ally. And I bet you'd rather feel safe in your own company than brace yourself for condemnation. Or when you feel overwhelmed or uncertain, just remind yourself that confusion is a natural part of growth. It doesn't mean you're failing, it means that you're brave enough to investigate the unexplored path. Each time you meet your own struggle with support instead of criticism, you remind yourself that you can handle whatever comes next and chase your dreams freely. That trust becomes the foundation for everything else. Your willingness to try, to fail, to learn, to grow. And it makes life much more interesting. I've read 3 books recently where positive self-image and self-esteem are the central topics. First, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, the plastic surgeon and author. Maltz noticed that people's self-image often didn't change even after successful cosmetic surgery. It led him to explore how self-perception affects performance and happiness. In his book, Maltz posits that our self-image is the controlling mechanism of our behavior. We act in alignment with how we see ourselves. Strong self-image triggers action. Weak one, avoidance. Second, Champion's Mindset by Patrick Mouratoglou, best known as the longtime coach of Serena Williams and other top tennis players. In the Champion's Mindset, Mouratoglou focuses on how confidence, resilience, and self-belief, not the ideal technique and ability, are first to help both athletes and individuals reach their potential. Training some of the best tennis players in the world and dealing with personal issues in his childhood, he learned that self-esteem is the foundation of readiness and success. And third, 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden, a psychologist closely associated with Ayn Rand's objectivist philosophy. In his book, Branden breaks high and stable self-esteem into 6 daily practices: living consciously, self-acceptance, self-responsibility, self-assertiveness, living purposefully, and personal integrity. Each pillar reinforces your trust in your own mind. Branden's core idea is that self-esteem cannot be built through empty praise or illusion. It grows from earned trust in your own mind and actions. These books underline the idea that your self-esteem is not just a belief, but a disciplined daily practice, and emphasize why you should nurture it rather than undermine it with negative persuasion. I strongly advise them to everyone who wants to understand how self-belief shapes personal success and learn how to strengthen it. The level of self-esteem becomes the filter through which we seize or ignore opportunities. Be the person who believes in you before anyone else does, because everything, your choices, your courage, your achievements, starts with the way you see and treat yourself. The voice you nurture inside becomes the life you live outside. See you next time! If you enjoy exploring topics on mindset and mental health, make sure to subscribe. In the next video, we'll talk about psychosomatics. I'll share my shocking story of how simply moving apartments cured my terrible neurodermatitis. Bye for now!